What is the AI for you, specifically for your business? How do you see AI?
It's a tsunami or a twister. It's like a tornado. And I'm out there, I'm a storm chaser chasing the tornado so I can anticipate what way it's going to move. How do you lead a business in the era of AI? So AI isn't just this thing, it's this.
AI, it's a tsunami, and communication legend and author of 6 best-selling books, Nancy Duarte, says that CEOs can't outsource it. As a CEO, behind some of the world's most iconic executive keynotes, she shares with me why she stepped back from daily operations to chase what AI means for leadership. So in this episode, you will learn how top CEOs are using AI to sharpen their message, avoid the robotic keynote trap, and cascade the narrative that actually moves people, not just fills slides.
If you're in a state of apathy, that's harder to have a company in a state of apathy about your vision than it is someone that's entrenched. You can actually convert someone that's entrenched more than you can convert someone who's apathetic.
What does it mean for you to be a CEO?
When you're a leader and you sign up to lead, you go through incredible persecution. You don't make every single decision perfectly. The season of grace for people who raise their hand as a leader is diminished, and it is lonely. Right now, I'm seeing so many CEOs destroyed by not doing that one thing, and that is.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the World Class Leader Show. Today, we are going straight into 3 of the biggest levers for modern CEOs and to the extent leaders. So AI, communication, and actually really how you evolve as a leader. And who better than Nancy Duarte can really help us in this conversation. Nancy is a CEO and author of 6 best-selling books. And since 1988, her company works with the highest performing brands and executives in the world. The insights from those consulting engagements get transformed into communication training. Nancy is a global recognized speaker and educator. Her books are used in most top universities. Her TED Talk has over 3.5 million views, and she has been featured in many national publications. And she's a columnist for MIT and HBR. Plus, her HBR book is the highest performing guidebook. So, Nancy, super happy to have you on the show.
I'm excited about our conversation.
Great. So, let me jump in. So in our previous conversation, when we preparing for this episode, you told me that AI is a tsunami and CEOs can't just hope, someone else figures it out for them. So let's really start there. I mean, AI, as you expect, given the AI interview CEOs, it comes, in the conversation all the time, not just most of them, all the time. But what's your angle? Why, for you, is all about tsunami?
I feel like a storm chaser. So as the CEO, when I saw this coming 2 years ago, I actually was like, had my exec team run the business itself so I could jump in. As CEO, I jumped in myself, figured out what it is, what's happening. So it's a tsunami or a twister. It's like a tornado. You know what? I'm out there. I'm a storm chaser chasing the tornado so I could anticipate what way it's going to move and what impact it's going to have on my business. So I've been doing that long enough. I still feel like I'm at the leading edge of what I know so that I'm going to arm my team with all the right tools. That's what we're launching this year, but it took me about 18 months to see through the storm and see, a really good sailor can kind of read the skies and anticipate where to go. And so kind of the banner concept this year is it's about how do you lead a business in the era of AI? So AI isn't just this thing throwing us into a whole new era. And how we respond to it now is going to determine winners and losers. That's what I think. So I've worked really hard to have a front row seat. If this technology is going to bring any demise or any advantage, every CEO needs to know the trade-offs of both of those.
So first of all, there are a lot of kind of assumptions about which, they are primarily oriented to or into productivity, improving productivity as a main use for AI. But then, I interviewed other CEOs and other incredible, amazing leaders. They're now seeing AI through a completely different angle, meaning the angle of the client, for example, or the angle for providing value to the community. So there are a number of different ways, and we're all testing in our own way AI. What is the AI for you, specifically for your business? How do you see AI really implemented as a kind of a really good use case, which might be different than traditional productivity element of doing things faster and better, right?
So we have efficiency gains. And then on the other side of that, we have like creative delight. So we're also kind of service business creative companies. So it's got to do one of those two things. So a recent MIT piece came out saying 11% of jobs are going to be eliminated. Like they're finally calling it what it is, or 11% gains. Even the LinkedIn chief product officer said it only saves an hour a day. I'm like, an hour a day, that's 12% of your week, right? And so it should be able to help you with productivity. Like if anyone is manually entering data, all the reports, all the pulling of data through things, we're not turning AI on in all the tools we license, but the ones that'll give us the best efficiency gains. You could measure it by how many hours did it take you to get to the same report. Like you have to have a measurement too of what it's actually going to do for you. We have a kickoff at the beginning of every year, and we are having all the teams do a breakout as a role. They're mapping out their entire workflow, and they have to tag various stages. Is this going to help us bump up client delight, or is it going to bring down efficiencies? And those are the two motions we're focusing on just this year. I told my team, it's kind of a bold statement. It kind of freaked them out. I go, we need to be the smartest AI person on the phone with our clients. They're like, what? And then I should have said the caveat, like in our space, like our clients shouldn't have to be struggling through how to make great presentations. We should be the guide helping them understand some of these things. And so, and every team is setting up prompt libraries and blah, blah, blah. Like it's going to be, this is the year. I feel like I've seen the way out of this storm. And now we're literally tactically going to deploy it across every role.
So I think to me, the most visionary leaders at the moment, they're exactly in your space. So they're thinking AI right now at a very systemic level in their business. It's not just here and there, which to me is one of the most interesting component of AI. If we now translate a little bit the use of AI more inside of your experience, your world of top communicator. So I heard you saying, then now when now people start talking in front of an audience on the keynotes, etc. And I suppose sometimes also happen with CEOs in front of maybe in the whole staff call or town hall. The study, I mean, I remember you said the study feel like is a ChatGPT kind of a text behind what they're saying. So how do you feel about that? I mean, we were both born in an environment in a world where AI, of course, did not exist, and we needed to draft, to craft every single word of our speech to really engage with people in a powerful way. How do you see how now plays a role inside of communications?
Yeah, what's happening is there's a lot of people that don't really know the power of a prompt. I think every role, regardless of what they do, needs to know that every LLM enjoys a different prompt structure and what that is. Like, I think the story I was telling you was I was like, I don't know, I was walking through my husband's office. He has the news on all the time. I can't work with the news on. And I hear this newscaster. I mean, she is literally regurgitating something from ChatGPT. It has a voice. So ChatGPT itself has a voice. And there are ways you could build your personal thought leadership voice as a CEO. You could feed even your own emails in there and it can learn and make a description of what your voice is like. So you can now tame quite a bit better. You can tame some of these tools, put it in your voice. I would really implore every CEO on the call. There is really no reason now to not have a thought leadership platform and use it in a way that really bolsters your brand value, your stock value, because it's easier to do it now. So you could put some of your thinking, you could put a working doc, you could put that into an LLM and it'll make a great thought leadership piece, or you could put it in a tool and it'll write a really great presentation script. I built a tool that'll do that. So there's really no excuse now, because you can have your personal chief of staff that's helping you, or your chief communications officer is what you could call it. And if you have the right team surrounding you, you could have this kit and this suite of tools that'll make you stand out above the competitor. You won't sound like the same chum like everyone else. You'll stand out, because I'm telling you right now, Wall Street Journal just came up with an article. I just put it on my LinkedIn, where the title storyteller in job postings in LinkedIn is massively up. It's almost doubled. So public companies, everyone, they're looking for storytellers because they know, and we're seeing this in our business. We're seeing a spike in in-person events. People trust eye contact. They trust things that come out of someone's mouth because they know that that is real, it's human, it's authoritative, it's their their body warms, their gestures, all of those things. People now are already swinging the pendulum away from like the written word over to the spoken word, because of its power and because of its authenticity. you know so it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be in my business, to be honest. It's very fun, very exciting.
My work is so much connected to people identity, meaning,
Yeah,
make sure that it's clear who you are, what you stand for as a leader, and also that your message is so consistent what you stand for. And message could be different, should be different based on the context, what is happening in your work. And then your presence is again consistent with your message. So to me, it's so much critical, important what you're saying, because the element of authenticity and having your voice, your message clear, always consistent, to me is a top priority for every leaders, but primarily for CEOs, because your words matter. And so every single time that you say something that is inconsistent or is different what you said before, that will generate, a chain of, reaction and effect on people because they started to see discrepancy in what you say. So
I think it takes a bit of work. It's not like you'll have a unique point of view unless you know your unique point of view. So one of the things about some of the generative AI tools is they'll just crank out what it already knows. It works hard for me if I snap a picture of an image, a sketch on a whiteboard and say, hey, this is that, and I'm connecting it to this and that. And then it creates this like an internal comms piece. It'll create, like, if you're in a whiteboard with your exec team and you're like, we need to communicate this out, you could take a picture of that. It'll help you make a cascading plan. It'll help you, if you know how to prompt for empathy, which we do that. It'll help you empathetically understand each role and cascade it down. We have all this training material on driving change through story. So it's powerful in the right hands, or it's dorky. Like, do not just go and grab the results and paste them in an email and think you did your job. So, yeah, I think it's exciting times, but there's employees are really resistant. Employees are naturally resistant to adopting it quickly.
possibly is the real changer for CEOs, because it also depends, the maturity of the organization and so on, the seniority of the organization. That to me has a huge implications. So, for example, one of my old client, remember, even their average age in the organization of people was around 42, which is very high, in these days. So, bringing AI in that specific context, not because people over 40, me included, they're stupid or they don't get it. It's more about shifting their behavior and shifting their way of thinking about AI, which is not necessarily natural or something comes easy for people.
I wish I hate citing studies when I can't say exactly where I saw it, but I saw it yesterday. And it actually said that the older generations of workers are faster to adopt it.
Oh, there you go.
It's the younger ones who are more like, no, because they're suspicious of everything, and rightly so. Look at the world they've been
Interesting.
raised in. But yeah, they're like, oh my gosh, because the ones that are very experienced are seeing really quick efficiency gains, da 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 da. Oh, and they know how to judge the output. They're already on the other side of having to have, yeah. And so it was kind of exciting and interesting to me. So that's why I'm all like, animated CEO, let's jump in together. And I'm having to empathetically think about, a couple generations behind me who are not, going to be jazz hands about AI. So it's interesting.
Well, great that you shared. I was not aware, which to me, now that you're saying, makes totally sense. So again, welcome to the world of perception. What we perceive in our own mind. Now, shifting more now from AI to communication. So you have really spent your career helping leaders, share messages and move people, which you have no idea how many people contact me, Nancy, just about that. Now, whether or not I can help them, and that's a different story. But to me, it's an increase in demands. And I don't know whether is a product, is a function of the current reality where people living with at the moment, or it's been always the case. You probably have a better answer because you have been working with people for many years around these themes. But I really would like to zoom out and the tools and talk about a deeper level, primarily for the CEOs, because our audience is primarily CEOs. But again, it's for all leaders or people that have a huge, responsibility in the organization. And to my point earlier is, in my work with CEOs, really, you always come back to language of conversation. It's always come back to. I say that is the only tool that you really have as a leader. There is nothing else that you can have as a leader. From your experience, really, what separates average CEO in this specific case, communication from world class CEOs or world class leaders? How can we say there is a huge difference between the two different groups?
I think the big difference between an average leader and a world class leader is how they communicate, obviously. And I think a lot of people are coming to you and to us for communication skills because the world is moving at an unprecedented speed. There's instability, right? So it's like when you first ride a bike, you're wobbly, right? But then this kind of counter motion of pumping the what they're called, like pedaling, pumping on the pedals, it creates, upright momentum. And I think that that's what's happening. The world is so wobbly, getting hit by so many things. And the ones that are successful can cut through the noise. And part of cutting through the noise is making trade offs. Is this going to finish? Or is this going to fail? Or is this like, how do I make, or can it be fixable? Or is it not fixable? So there's certain decisions before you communicate, you have to think through, and then you have to like just slice through the chaos, slice through the fog. Every employee shows up at work every day. They've listened to the news. They might be stressed out. They have fog. Their role might not be clear to them. The impact on the outcomes of the company might not be clear to them. And it's the CEO's role. It's like you're enlisting like a volunteer army to help you get these initiatives done, sometimes on top of their work, and they can rally. They can rally, they can drive results, they can drive the whole company to the goals you set. It's just unbelievable. So if the CEO themselves can't do it, they need a number two that takes all of that on, so the CEO can stay the visionary and the one who's out there storm chasing and doing all of that stuff. So it kind of depends on the structure, but I mean, communication makes or breaks success in all of history, in all of time.
I cannot agree more with you. You said it right. And to me, something that um, really resonated with me when we were talking, behind the scene. I mean, you said the new landscape at the moment for sales, but also for all executives now, is requiring as well more attention to resistance. So people, they need to prepare for resistance. And I suspect why you're saying this is there is an increased level of resistance. So can you elaborate a little more and how that plays out into the way of communicating?
Yeah. I think ever since the like button, I think Jonathan Haidt says, ever since the like button in 2008 changed our future. And he thinks it's going to take 1,000 years to recover society. Um, because it's created an opportunity for dissent to be normal, like for people to just dissent, like so I don't agree, blah blah blah, and we could just put it out there. Yet we have not been taught how to debate an idea openly and thoughtfully and carefully, and how to run a team, how to facilitate a conversation. So instead, what happens, you have a very important decision to make. You put it out there on the table. People partially communicate, and then they go on to Slack or Teams and they chat about you behind your back, instead of like, no, let's put everything out on the table and openly talk about your objections. So in every talk, like in planning for my own vision talk, I'm making very clear what the assumptions are that led me to get to this decision, and the assumption that things are going to stay as they are. And I'm actually been listening very deeply, and I have a couple of team members listening deeply to what the resistance is, like specifically to AI. And there's some serious and valid reasons to be resistant to AI. So what you have to do is you have to use quite a bit more rhetorical devices and argumentation, like the literal, rhetorical device of, hey, I understand you might be thinking this, and I think about that too. Like this kind of like state their potential objections so that they don't say them first, so that they don't go away and they're up all in Slack or Teams or whatever, like, And so I think you can capture more heart and mind when you have actually just anticipated their resistance. We have a Q&A. It makes a Q&A up in a tool that I built, and it basically especially if you're going to the exec suite, helps you prepare. Like, what is every single way they might resist this idea, or what's every single way they might just be curious about it? And then you could prep. You could use it. It's 20 questions. You could prep. Highly likely those are questions. And you can actually take those questions and embed them and say, I bet you're thinking da da da. Or, I was doing this research and I saw a whole lot of people feel this way. And I bet some of you do too. Right. And right there, they're just like, oh, they're like relieved that you thought of that. And then you can counter with your perspective or tear apart the source of the data or whatever you need to do to help bring them along so that your company's vision and the dream of their own flourishing continues. And that's the promise on my team, right? I want them to learn it so that so the whole company can flourish and they can flourish. They could upskill and gain skills, for the future.
Great, and I'm with you. And by the way, I was while you were answering to this question, I was reflecting what you were saying is y- you had me connect to one of the assumptions that many great communicators and marketers made, which is when you're able to articulate what people really think, and it could be as well an objection and resistance in a better way that they can actually articulate it themselves. I think, of course, you're gonna sell yourself in terms of meaning you are really engaged with people, but that things started to land in a different way. And I also, my takeaway for you said is also the level of empathy and compassion to some extent, of be able to put yourself in their shoes, because you have, right, so you have prepared for what they might potentially say, even if they don't say, but they can still think about it, which is unfortunately is the inner voice that still work a lot for people. So great point, Nancy. I have the last question about communication, but to me it's important. It also is, I know, is a very important for many CEOs out there, is all the point about cascading communication. So look, some of the at least in my line of work, I mean, a lot of CEOs and leaders, when they do a good job, they're able to align quite well at the executive top table, maybe with the board, but then started to ask, okay, how can we cascade whatever change we're about to make, transformation, change, strategy, direction, whatever. So they feel like there is a disconnection with their entire organization, and most of the time there is a disconnection, and I'm not sure they really understand, not everybody at least, how to bridge that gap through communication versus all the other things that they have to do. So what's your take based on your experience? How would you approach that?
I love this question. So I have a book that I wrote with Patty Sanchez, and we actually studied, instead of studying stories, we studied epic stories. So an epic tale is like Gilgamesh, Beowulf, or like Lord of the Rings. This whole galaxy of story. It transcends space and time. That's what driving change is like. Multiple um, multiple people groups that have to go, and they all have the same desire, and they're all trying to get to the same place. So we found that what happens is the leader is like up, they're up on a ladder. They can see where they need to head, but the where each constituent is, we call them the travelers, those who need to travel with you. There's 5 stages they might be. They might be in the dream phase still. They might have already jumped in. They might be in the fight, the climb, or they may have arrived. So what you have to do is empathetically think about each department or each team and think about, where are they? Where is their emotional fuel? Especially, you could be starting it, or they could be in the middle of. What if they're in the middle of an initiative you said would take 3 years and it's taken them 5? Like, they're exhausted. They need a different message from you when you're cascading the next great thing. So I think visionaries and leaders have an appetite for the new thing, and their team is like, what the heck? I just slayed the biggest dragon and I still have a 12-month climb out of this pit I'm in to reach your last objective, let alone this one. So you have to really have a kind of a methodical way to assess where everyone is. And then what generative AI tools are good at, once you load up enough information and you understand the pain, whether they need speeches, stories, ceremonies, or symbols, what is it they need to move on, to let go of the past, to move forward? It can help with some cascading through different departments and for the different fuel it needs. But you have to do some thinking up front to actually understand the frameworks, because every person, or at least every team or department or business unit, is going to need a different message. Some are going to be farther along and others aren't. And so you can't it's not universal. You can't cascade the same thing.
Exactly, which really was my thought while you were saying this is the reality is the traditional, in my experience though, cascading communication in cascading methodical way from one extent, I think is exactly what you have to do because that's the way to reach more people. But the reality is people are in different space every single time. So some of them they already actually positive and they see they're full with optimism in terms of what's coming in terms of change etc, but other people they're not there, they will never be there. So I think the challenge would be how can you first of all have a clear sentiment where the organization is,
I
and
think
to
it's
be fair.
interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, the traditional way of doing, which is not necessarily what I love, but I consider
Yeah.
that is the easiest way, this kind of an engagement survey, trying to get the pulse of people. But then you don't know exactly at the individual level where people are. So that
Yeah.
requires much more conversation between those leaders than manager, right?
Yeah. And leaders, your good leaders will cascade the message across really, really well. And I think what you're bringing up is, how either entrenched or how optimistic is the company about this idea. And in the research we did that was never published for Illuminate, we found that if you're in a state of apathy, that's harder to have a company in a state of apathy about your vision than it is someone that's entrenched. You can actually convert someone that's entrenched more than you can convert someone who's apathetic. That's why this quiet quitting and all those things that happen were particularly not dangerous for companies, but particularly ominous, I could say, right? Because it was just too hard to motivate people who aren't motivated. So it's interesting. It's an interesting season to lead. Everything's changed. It's just different.
It is, and the level of engagement of people is not increasing. So I think the more we move forward with such a level of uncertainty, actually the higher is to really win the hearts of people in organizations. So it's not going to get easier. So I think that is, to me, an important takeaway from that. Um, Look, we're talking to CEOs in this podcast, but you are a CEO, Nancy. So it's not just about AI. You've been CEOs of your own company for many, many years now. But also, especially when the latest changes for you has been kind of a leadership shift. I mean, you have been through a number of your own traditional phases of your leadership. What does it mean for you to be a CEO, and how that shifted and changes in 2026 when we are talking today?
Well, I might be in a unique place, but I did, like I said, I mean, I have someone running the exec team better than I ever did, and am starting to systematize all of the productivity and measuring results and every cascading everything so that I can have my eye on the ball where it needs to go. This was like I was saying, it was like fog and I couldn't see. I couldn't, I'm out on the vista looking around and the fogs, it's like zero visibility fog. And I've kind of like, I don't know, dug my way through some fog and I at least have some clarity. So I think this is a once in a long era thing and it's happening fast. The internet happened and then it failed. There was a dot-com boom. The promise of the internet took about 15 years to happen, but the promise of AI, like right now, I really encourage every CEO to follow all the AI leaders on X. Just like, I can't even believe how much I bookmark or how much I need to flick to different parts of my team just so they know and they're on top of it. So that's the kind of weird thing that's changed for me. And what's cool as a leader is I can stay on top of the health of all of our customers. If they're hurting, if they're healthy, if they're boom or they're busting, there's just ways to do things like that in a more automated way. But I think how I show up, um, when you're a leader and you sign up to lead, it sounds weird to say, you go through incredible persecution. You don't make every single decision perfectly. And so I think the season of grace for people who raise their hand as a leader is diminished. And it is lonely and it's hard to even define because you can't just share your true self. You just can't show up and share what's really on your mind a lot of times. And so I think just using wisdom and discernment in how you show up, when you show up, and think before you speak is like it sounds so basic, but right now I'm seeing so many CEOs destroyed by not doing that one thing. So, and that is my own development area, right? I like to share freely what I know or what I've heard. So I think it's helping other people, but sometimes they're like, what? Like we're like, I just cited a bunch of stuff I read just on this podcast, but I just think that we have to stay way more on top of it than we used to.
I'm interesting because one of the things you're going through, you went through, is this transition from traditional founder to proper CEO and have your executive team, as you mentioned. And I think it sounds like you reached a moment where you can fully trust your executive team. You have somebody looking at the whole, which I know is great. I think is one of the best possible outcome of leading as an organization. So as you say, you can really focus on the things that matter for the future. But what did it take for you to get to the level where you are right now, from the beginning to the end? And I know it's a difficult question because that is by something that many people are grappling with.
I think the thing that makes an entrepreneur is we're pretty good at a lot of things, right? We could do a lot of things versus maybe doing one thing super well. We could just do it. We think we're pretty good at a lot of things. So we're like, I could start a business. Yeah, I could do anything, right? So what happened when we got to about like when I used to come in and we were smaller, like under 30 people. I mean, I did all the client work. I did all the strategy. Like people would literally show up and I would have sketched slides sitting on their seat for them to execute that day. Like I was the hub and everyone else was the spoke. And I remember I hired a friend of mine, and believe it or not, he used to work in the lab at Stanford and he was the monkey specialist. So it was perfect. I hired him to observe me, the crazy monkey lady, to observe me. I'm like, John, could you please just watch me write job descriptions, like just observe me, write a job description and go and find that person, right? So he would do it, hand me the job description one at a time, thank goodness. And I would read the job description, take it home that night. And I had to fully mourn the loss of that role. I liked it. Like I liked so many of these things. I took it and I was like, I will never do this job again. Cause I thought if I didn't fully consider that job as dead to me, I would expect the person filling it to be me and do it my way, right? And so so I would get a job, I'd be like, oh, I loved this part of my job, right? So that was a big moment, which was going from the master craftsman to to letting go. And then another really big defining moment is because I was traveling and speaking and books were coming out. So I was not talking to customers. So even when we took on Al Gore, I didn't take him on. Like, and people are like, wow, he never got upset because my team is smarter than me. I really did hire a team smarter than me. And so like big name people would call and famous people would call. And I'm like, because I could not be a CEO and a thought leader and a traveling speaker. I had to narrow. I couldn't take on customers anymore. So that was another is not delivering or getting involved in customer work. So now I fly high. I'll interview them sometimes, but I'm not involved in customer work. What that did though is it kind of created this distance. Like then it just became a norm for like the smarter people not to be deeply involved in the customer. And so then like everything has a trade-off. And then because I wasn't really involved in the customer work, I really didn't have a book deadline and I wasn't traveling. It was easy for me the last bits I was doing was to hand that off to my exec team to run the business. So, but this tsunami, um, called AI, this new era of how businesses need to be rebuilt, called the era of AI is how I can frame it, is too critical for CEOs not to have a real, not even just a thumb on the pulse, I was going to say, but eyes wide open. And don't delegate it to Jimmy and IT's taking care of it, or only sales is going to be impacted. What just you've got to have a summit or a gathering and say, what is our business going to be? The chief product officer at LinkedIn said on Lenny's podcast, he said that they know at LinkedIn that in 5 years, almost every role is going to be 80% different, Andrea. That is a statistic. And LinkedIn has been pretty accurate in their statistics. So he said it on, so that's a big thing. That's really big change in 5 years. And I think every CEO listening needs to really, really understand kind of the scale of the impact.
Yeah. So, and my takeaway from what you said is one, you had your own breakthrough moments. So, your moments where you started to realize the implication of not being a full CEO in having your own team. So, that's to me is great. It's a part of your journey. The last thing that you said is the size of the prize is that significant and meaningful AI, which requires a much more structured way of dealing with versus just to optimize the possibility, right? And I think that is a very good way of framing it. The last question I have about you as a CEO in your role, you said as well to me that values are really important. And by the way, we might say something that is very common. Many people say, yes, even for me, the value is important. But they're really important for you and what you're building in your organization, so Duarte Inc. But also, it's important for you to protect your performance as a company because at the end of the day, you're a CEO and you have a business to run. How are you able to combine the two things, meaning protecting the right value, having the right people around you, but at the same time keeping a performance mindset in the organization? I know it's a difficult question. So, but any insight from you?
So, interestingly, our values spell the word bliss, which is belong, lead, innovate, and serve. So, when you have a value called belong, how do you have a performance culture, right? Because you become very fond of these people and then it almost can turn into ruinous empathy, right? But we really like them. Let's not let them go or. And so we've had to put a lot of rigor. We put in a tool called 15.5. Everyone's got cascading plans. We're really rigid on the 30, 60, 90 onboarding. Our interview process is incredibly rigorous. We interview around not only the values, but because we're a fully remote culture, we have to really have evidence like, how do you track your to-do list? And if they don't light up and say, oh my gosh, let me show you this piece of paper, it has little empty boxes and I'm going to get they have to show enthusiasm of leaning in and being self-motivated and all that, right? Then they belong and then we can run performance. And our values are pretty deep in our culture. Everyone can state the 4 values and what they mean, but not even dovetailing on those 4 values are 4 business operating principles that help you understand business acumen and they're commingled. It makes one visual model. And so this year, the emphasis is actually on our business operations, which is cultivate employees, delight customers, drive the industry, and thrive financially. So now we're just doubling down. Everyone's going to really understand the fruit of what it's going to look like when all of the role they play to make a difference in all of the operating models. So we've had them forever and we talk about them, but now people are going to be able to, state them too, because those are the drivers of our actual success and the values are the drivers of our culture is how we divide them.
So we are about to end to get at the end of this conversation, Nancy. I have one final question about you. So, given the audience, so all the CEOs out there, given what we said, so we talked about AI, we talked about AI and communication, then being a CEO in modern times. Given your experience, given what you're looking at right now, what are maybe one or two advice that you like to give to CEOs right now? They're listening or they're watching this episode, so they can start really thinking different way for their own business.
I would say, like, when I wake up every day, my little prayer I whisper is, I want to be empathetic. I want to see them through their own eyes. I want to walk in their shoes for a little bit because I can move so quickly. Every CEO moves so fast. We have to be, and that's part of what makes us successful. We're quick to be decisive and quick to discern, right? And so I just implore us to kind of slow down enough to see the humanity. And I think that's going to make everyone have an edge over AI, is to see the humanity and speak to the humanity. That would be my wish for everyone.
That's such a great point. Nancy, look, a lot of people can look at your books that you have written, in the past. But for those who want to get much more deeper into your work, where should they start?
They could go to duarte.com. I have a newsletter and I'm pretty prolific up on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm at Nancy Duarte. We have at Duarte. So those places are a great start.
Yeah, and by the way, for those who are listening, so Nancy and I actually connected on LinkedIn. So I still believe LinkedIn is the best possible opportunity to connect with like-minded people. And Nancy and I think we are a good example of that. So Nancy, thank you so much. To me, that was an amazing conversation. So much on point to what's going on right now. So thank you again for being with me today.
Thanks for having me, Andrea. It was awesome. Had a good time.